Now let's talk about displaying quantitative data, data that we collect that are a group of meaningful numbers. So the distribution is the word that we use to describe what the overall pattern to the data looks like, what the overall layout is. So we can visualize the distribution by partitioning the variable into small groupings or bins when we have a large data set. When we do that, we can then count the frequency that fall into each one of those bins and use that frequency to create a bar chart, basically. But it's called a histogram since it's with quantitative numbers and they go along a continuous axis. And unlike a bar chart, a histogram has bars that touch. So we put the frequencies on the vertical axis, and then the continuous value of the quantitative variable we measured is plotted along the horizontal axis, and we count up the categories in each of the bins. Now, if instead of doing the frequencies on the vertical axis, we instead do the relative frequencies, then it's called a relative frequency histogram instead of a histogram. So we're just plotting the percentages instead of the counts along there. So here's an example, right? So this is the number of months, this is our count of months, and a price change. So what this represents to me is that there's about, what, 24-ish is where I'd read this height of the bar? 24 data points that fall with a price change in between -5 and 0. That's how I would read that bar. There are, what, maybe 2 data points that have a price change that fall in between -10 and -5. That's how I would read that bar in the data chart. So what that allows me to do is it allows me to get an overall picture of what the data looks like. Now, in the link below this video where it says additional resources, of course, those aren't usually quote unquote required, but I am going to require you to watch that first one because it's going to explain to you the process of how to make a histogram. And I'm just omitting it from my video since it's done so well in that one for time purposes, so that we can discuss more things in this set of videos that I'm creating. Now, another type of visual display is a dot plot. A dot plot is kind of like a histogram on its side, except you can count how many data points lie in each of those values. So like, for example, if I look right here, this tells me there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 data points that have a value of 130. So basically what I do is I plot every single data point on my dot plot. But when they have the same value, I put them right next to each other. And it forms kind of like these bars on the side of those dots. And that allows me to see how many fall in each category. So here I can see there's one grouping up here and one grouping down here. That tells me that there's kind of 2 peaks to the data, even though this peak is much, much smaller than this one. A stem and leaf plot is where we, again, include every single data value in plotting, but we make the stem everything except the last digit of the number. So if I want to create a stem and leaf plot for the set of data scores that I see here, what I would do is have my stems be 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10, and then my individual leaves are the last digits. So under the stem 6, there's only one leaf, it's a 7. Under the stem 7, we have a leaf at 2 and a leaf at 5. Under the stem of 8, we have a leaf at 5, 8, 9, and 9. Then under the stem of 9, we have a leaf at 0 and at 9. And under the stem of 10, we have a leaf at 0. So looking just at the chart, I can read this by saying, oh, I have 2 scores of 89, one here and one here. Now, this is a small data set, so I would represent my stem and leaf chart like this. But if I have a larger data set, I could break up the stem into two pieces and graph 0 through 4 in the first half and 5 through 9 in the second half. And so that allows me to see there are no low 80 scores, it's only high 80 scores. But again, I'd really only want to do this when I have a much bigger data set than what I'm dealing with here. So next we're going to talk about describing a distribution using the shape, center, and spread. So we'll continue that in the next video.